Hi, and welcome back to the Save It for Parts channel. Something people frequently ask me in the comments is, how do I get free internet from space? How do I get satellite internet with no cost, no obligations, no contract? Well, that doesn't really exist. However, the closest thing that I have heard to free data from space is something called the Othernet system, or it used to be called Outernet. There was a flurry of publicity for Outernet back in 2014, 2015 when it first started, and it was essentially a one-way internet or data broadcast from space using the L-band, about 1.6 gigahertz, and you could get a little device with a receiver, get this broadcast from space, store files onto your computer or onto your little receiver box. Now, you couldn't actually transmit anything, you couldn't request certain files, but you would just get whatever they happen to be sending down. So Wikipedia article updates, news article updates, stock prices, things of that nature that could be useful if you're completely off-grid or if you're in a developing country and you want to stay somewhat connected to the world, but you don't have regular broadcast news. Maybe you have censored broadcast news. You're in some third world dictatorship somewhere in the Middle East. You can't rely on the government propaganda, so you want to know what's actually going on in the world. Well, a little system like this would attempt to overcome some of those difficulties. Now, after that initial flurry of interest in 2014, 2015, the system seemed to kind of flake out. There were some Kickstarter type things, there were some changes in which satellite it was on and which frequency it was on and what kind of hardware you needed, and information about Othernet or Outernet got very inconsistent. It was really hard to tell, is this thing legitimate? Is it still around? Even just a few years ago, I went to their website and I tried to find out, is Othernet still available? Their website said something about it's offline, but we'll fix it in 2021. Well, this was like 2023 when I looked this up. So worst case scenario, they had gone out of business. Best case, they just forgot to update their website in several years. I did try emailing them back in 2022, 2023. Never got a response, so I could not tell if they were around. There is a web forum, but it doesn't seem very active, with replies being several years apart in some cases. Now, at some point after 2016, they apparently switched over to a KU band system. The L band wasn't affordable enough anymore, or the satellite provider wouldn't renew their contract. I don't know exactly. Again, there's very little information on this out there. So I started this video partly in response to people asking, is there free satellite internet out there? And my answer is, maybe. If Othernet is still around, then it has kind of one-way internet. Again, you can get curated transmissions down. You're not going to be able to request a page, but you can get article updates, you can get news updates. I did hear a rumor that they are shutting down at the end of 2024, which is why I'm doing this video now in October of 2024. Supposedly, Othernet is going to be around until December. I wanted to give it a try if it's still up, but I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to do this. The main downside of Othernet seemed to always be that you had to buy their special receiver. I even looked at some used models on eBay that were $50, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste $50 on something that I don't know if it's even broadcasting, so I never ended up buying one. Now, there was some information back in 2016 or so that you could do this without their expensive receiver. You could do it with an SDR, with a Hacker F1, or just an RTL SDR. That seemed to be mostly for the L-band system. So after 2016, it seemed like you definitely had to buy their receiver equipment. And again, their website was always kind of permanently out of date by a few years. So I could never tell if things were actually for sale, if you sent any money to the website, if you'd ever get a product. All right, well, this certainly looks promising. Man, there's all kinds of stuff in here. Oh, no way. I have literally been looking for one of these. They do not make this anymore, and I literally just started a video on this, and I've been emailing this Othernet outfit, trying to get them to either send me one or tell me if there's one available, because they are a very difficult company to track down. But here is one, so we can finish the Othernet video. And I think, oh, there's even another one in here, and there are LNBs. I think these are the universal LNBs for Othernet. So that is amazing. This is fantastic timing. I literally started this video last night, didn't realize this stuff was coming. I think maybe this guy had told me he had some Othernet stuff, so maybe I had it in the back of my mind, but I literally did not know this was coming when I started the video. Oh, and here is another Othernet, or they used to be called Outernet. So here is another receiver. This might be the L-band version. I think this is their older one. This kind of looks like a repurposed DSL modem or satellite modem. That's kind of interesting. I wonder if somebody just hacked a DVB receiver into this. This is more documentation than I've really found online about Othernet or Outernet, so that's fantastic. We'll have to see if this still works. Some backstory here. In June of 2024, we went out to an event in San Francisco called Open Sauce, and this was put on by YouTubers, for YouTubers. Very cool, kind of science fair, show and tell thing. Really fun. If you get a chance to go to Open Sauce 2025, I would recommend everyone go to that. We met some really cool people out there, including some viewers of this channel, and a couple of people we met contacted me later and offered to send me some of their random stuff for the channel. One person especially mentioned that they had some old satellite stuff, and they offered to send it. I said, yeah, sure. I gave them my address. Huge thanks to Greg for sending me this stuff. This is going to keep me busy for probably a few months and several videos, so very cool. Thank you so much. I am going to be using some of this probably right away. So from what I can find online, this Lighthouse gadget is actually also for KU band, and it is just a repurposed DVB-2 receiver. So this is just a hacked satellite set-top box with custom firmware, and apparently this runs Linux, so we might be able to do something interesting with this, but this is for actually even farther back before the L-band service. They were on C-band and KU band. Then they switched to L-band, so this stopped being useful. Then they switched back to KU band, but apparently on a different satellite. So I think, long story short, I don't think this is going to be useful for Othernet. So I might just put this aside for the moment. Maybe we'll come back to it if I find more information online. So let's look at these other guys. So again, these are universal L&Bs. So these receive not just North American TV channels, but supposedly international channels. And you can change the frequency range, I think, by either giving it a 22 kilohertz signal, or maybe there's some other setting. But these can be potentially useful for something else. They have a pretty wide range for KU band, so 10.489 all the way up to 12.75 gigahertz. These you can get on eBay for like 10 bucks. They're not really that special. This is what's difficult to find these days, the Othernet Dreamcatcher. So this is their little custom board. We have the input from the LNB. We have a couple SD card slots. We have an audio output. I believe this is either a little Wi-Fi dongle or Bluetooth. We've got USB power. The second one is exactly the same, version 3.05. Now, one cool thing about having two of these, supposedly these have a LoRa radio on board, and you can send messages between two boards like this. So even if the satellite service goes offline, you can use these as LoRaWAN, LoRa radios. I don't know if you can use them as Meshtastic radios. Might have to look into that, but potential future use for it if and when Othernet finally goes offline. Now, I did find some information on how to set this thing up, but it's also a little sketchy because it mentions in 2021 there were bandwidth changes, there were satellite changes. So here in 2024, I don't know if any of this is correct anymore. Much like Raspberry Pi, this cannot use most USB power supplies. It needs a higher amperage supply to power the LNB, power its own boards. So I'm gonna have to find something like a micro USB power supply for a Raspberry Pi, because 99% of the USB chargers I have will not power this. We are also going to need an SD card for the operating system, and then we'll need a second SD card for the downloaded data if we ever get to that point. Alright, I found an image of that Skylark operating system, so we're writing that out to an SD card. Supposedly we don't need a dish for this, we just need the LNB aimed at the sky. We might have to mess with the aiming, and it might not work inside. We might have to move this outside, but for now, just want to see if we can connect to this thing through Wi-Fi and get into the settings. And we already apparently have some kind of username and password here. There we go, we are logged into the Dreamcatcher board. So this is the desktop of that, and these are some of the options that Dreamcatcher has. So we've got about the operating system, very basic. Let's see, we've got calculator, file manager. Yeah, we need to log in as admin to use some of the features. So apparently the admin account, the username and password are both Othernet. So I think to actually receive the satellite, we want to run this tuner app. We have our region set, Americas, we have our frequency and our beam type. I don't know if these are correct. We can change a few other things. We can mess with the frequency and the beam type. This might be the actual transponder, I'm not sure. So let's see, the bias T is configured. We have bias T voltage, LNB power is configured. LNB is detected and bias T voltage is normal. So we know we can see that LNB that we're connected to. That's a good sign. As of 2021, Othernet was on SES2 for North America. So I've gone over to dishpointer.com. We are going to look for SES2, which should be 87 West. Here we go. So once I've put in my location and it shows my house, then it tells me where to aim my dish and then what elevation and skew to put it at. And I can drag this around to tell the website where my actual antenna is going to be located. All right, we have this professionally zip tied to an old tripod, and we've got the L&B aimed at the sky. I think I have the azimuth correct. For the elevation, just have this little angle finder that I got at the hardware store. Pretty cheap. We need to be about 37.8, I believe. So I'm gonna just adjust this thing. So I've entered the current satellite details, or at least what they were in 2021. Again, I don't know if that's correct, but we're gonna see if that works. Somebody going by Tyson Power on the forum created a couple apps to assist with satellite finding. So I'm gonna see if we can run these. So this is just an app that runs on the Dreamcatcher board. It's essentially an HTML page. Now this frequency finder app also has this auto tune setup, so we could give that a shot. I'm not actually sure how this works or how it gets feedback from the Dreamcatcher system, but it does seem to be stepping through some frequencies to see if it can find anything. I dug around on the forum some more, and it looks like in 2023 the frequency changed to 12.05812, and there's no information on the beam type, so I guess we're just going to leave it at 36. Still nothing in our status window. We'll try running that search again with the new frequency. So one potential problem here is every time I close and open this tuner, the settings are different. So I think it's being changed not only in here, but also from that web page app. And then it doesn't always default back to where you want it. So I'm never 100% sure what the frequency is set to, and that's kind of a problem for something like this. Either way, we're getting absolutely nothing with the little L&B here. So I've gone out there, I've readjusted it, I've re-aimed it, I've got it dialed in pretty close, I think, but we are getting absolutely nothing in the status window. From everything I can tell, it is supposed to still be operating through December of this year. So if we can get it, we should have a couple more months of content, but getting it is proving to be the hard part. Okay, since we weren't getting anywhere with the bare L&B, I went ahead and strapped the L&B onto my folding satellite dish. So we've got that at the focal point. We have the Dreamcatcher just zip tied onto the back here, and we're using a big power supply because, again, I'm having trouble finding a power supply that will run this. So we've got all that at the focal point of this 7-foot dish. And now, if we look at the screen here, we are actually getting something in the tuner status. So we have a stream, we have an SNR, we are not locked, so we're not dialed in just right here, but we have received one packet, so things are looking up. And we've got some stuff here on the web app as well, although it doesn't update very fast. I've been wiggling the dish around trying to increase this number, and it never updates, so I don't know what the lag time on this is. All right, we ran auto tune again, and it looks like we are getting about 60 to 100%, well, maybe 30 to 100% lock on 12.05822 gigahertz. So that's looking promising. And now this is updating a lot more. We have a better SNR. Yeah, we've got a bit rate, we've got a packet rate, and yeah, it looks like we've gotten 50 some packets already. And we actually have some data coming down. I don't have the text of this article, but we have the headline. It's a little bit out of date as well. 12th September, we're now towards the end of October, but that's a fairly appropriate headline to be the first thing we downloaded on our satellite system. We actually have a couple things now. We've got Voice of America, and we've got some full articles here. And then, let's see, we've got some sports ball, so we can find out about that. So again, this is all passively downloading just whatever feed happens to come through the Othernet satellite system. We have no control over what we're getting. We're just getting the raw stream coming down from space, receiving that, decoding it, turning it into text files and whatnot. It's very similar to my other dish here that downloads weather satellite data from the GOES East satellite. Again, I have no control over what comes down from that. I am just getting pictures, GIF animations, text files, and whatever else the GOES satellite is sending down. And I have a little Raspberry Pi system up there that reads those, stores them onto an SD card, and I can go through and look at those later. If we want to get much out of the Othernet Dreamcatcher long term, we'll have to leave it set up and aimed at the satellite STS-2 for a while, just to continue downloading those streams, see what it collects over, say, a 24-hour period, and then we can go back through and just read the files we want, look at the Wikipedia articles we want, and see what comes down to it. I left the thing running for a few hours, and we actually have some stuff from Atlas Obscura now. That's pretty cool. We've also got BBC News. We've got a bunch of stuff there. We've got foreign BBC News. We've got German, East Asian, African, and we've got some Wikipedia stuff. So I think these are just kind of all the latest Wikipedia updates. So yeah, we've got just a few articles that have been updated recently. So some interesting stuff. Paleontology, the 45th Chess Olympiad. Let's see if we have any weather yet. No data yet. So I think if we left this running longer, we would start getting weather data downloaded, but it has not happened to come through the stream just yet. Well, here's a log of all the new stuff that's been downloaded recently. We still have no messages. There's something I kind of want to try with this. So there's not only this APRS system where you can send messages to Othernet using a packet radio, but you can also apparently send messages right from the Othernet forum. I can't pass up the chance to spam everyone with my YouTube channel, so let's give that a shot. All right, and it said it sent that. So then we can pop over to our satellite system and see if the message comes through. Well, now I can't log into the thing. There's some kind of AJAX error. And now I have no more sessions available. I have no idea what that means. All right, we managed to get back in, but we still have no messages. I was going to leave the thing longer and see if that message ever comes through, but I feel some raindrops now, and I absolutely don't have this weatherproofed. It's just sitting there, so I think we're gonna have to shut it down and stick it in the garage for now. Or I could just throw a trash bag over it. That works too. And the trash bag doesn't affect the signal too much. I did lose about 1 dB of SNR. I was at -7, now I'm at -8, but that's still not too bad. All right, it's actually raining quite a bit. We've had a drought for a number of weeks here, and this is the first big hard rain we've had for a while. So I was gonna leave the dish out all night, but if the wind picks up, I don't want it to blow around. This is just it's a temporary dish. It's a portable dish, so it has basically no wind resistance. So I think we're gonna wrap it up for the night. Now, it doesn't look like we've picked up anything new in the last few hours. The log of what's new here is pretty much the same. Yeah, our news is all the same stuff that we had before. We have not picked up anything after 9/12. Still no messages. Yeah, our SNR has gotten worse with the rain, so we're down to -12. All right, it's the morning of day 2. We've got the dish set up again. I've adjusted it a little bit more. We actually have a better SNR now. We have a -3. I did have to run that auto-tune app again and just get the new frequency. It seems like the frequency of that LNB drifts a little bit. So yesterday when it was 80 degrees out, the frequency was a little higher. This morning, after it's been 40 degrees overnight, now the frequency is back where it should be. So this little universal LNB definitely seems to have some temperature sensitivity, and it seems like the tuning just varies a little bit based on the outside weather. So I don't know if it's really suitable for a permanent long-term installation or it's something you have to constantly retune. And we are downloading some stuff, but it is still content from September 12th. So this thing, even after 24 hours, it's still streaming down last month's news. I'm hoping it'll get around to streaming this month's news, but I don't know. Maybe it's just a month out of date on their server. While I wait to see if new stuff downloads on the Dreamcatcher, let's give the old Lighthouse device a try. Now again, I don't think it will actually get anything if we hook it up to an antenna because it uses a KU band system, DVB-S, which is not being broadcast anymore, but apparently it still works as a local file server, so let's just hook it up to Wi-Fi and see if we can talk to it. So the Lighthouse is back from when the company was called Outernet, so now we have both the Othernet and Outernet Wi-Fi networks, and it appears to have the firmware built into the Lighthouse unit. There's no SD or TF card in there, so we don't have to load any firmware, we don't have to flash anything onto a card, it's already on the system. Now it does want us to configure an LNB type, universal KU or C-band, and then select a satellite. So we used to be apparently on Galaxy 19 in the US, but that one is not transmitting anymore, at least from everything I can see online. Alright, it looks like there is some existing content on here, so whoever used this before maybe had some downloaded stuff, so let's see if we can just import that. Alright, so it looks like we are all set. So this is the main page of the Outernet librarian software. Yeah, not super useful here so far. We do have some images. Well, I've got somebody's picture from Twitter. Yeah, some kind of meeting. I don't know what's going on here, but yeah, we've got some stuff from Twitter from, I don't know, 2014, 2015. See, we supposedly have this breaking news JSON file, but yeah, it just kind of opens up as this raw JSON. It's, again, not super interesting. We can get the headlines and the date, so yeah, it looks like all this is from July of 2015. Now, apparently this thing is just a cheap universal set-top box underneath the hood, so I think there's other firmware we could flash on here. We could put some simple Linux distribution on here, and we could use it as a DVB-S tuner, so we could hook it up to a satellite dish. We could potentially get free-to-air satellite TV. We could potentially get other datacasts. I don't really know what's out there as far as DVB-S or S2 datacasts. I know there was some NOAA stuff. There is or was some weather data that you can get in Europe. There's some ham radio stuff you can get in Europe from satellites. But I don't really know what's available in the US. I don't really know what else I can do with this little DVB tuner box thing. So I'm probably going to just turn it off, put it aside, and maybe we'll come back to this. Maybe somebody's got a suggestion for what I can do with an Othernet or Outernet, in this case Lighthouse. Now, supposedly the Dreamcatcher has a pretty capable SDR, software-defined radio circuit on there with a range of about 40 megahertz all the way up to 6 gigahertz. That's better than an RTL SDR. That's a pretty decent range. Now, there may or may not be an L-band LNA and filter built in here. The old ones definitely did have that because they used L-band, and a KU-band LNB, I believe, down converts to L-band. So I don't know if this has the L-band filter amplifier built in or if it just relies on the filtering and amplifying done in the satellite LNB. So it might be worth trying to get Linux onto here, see if we can run something like SDR++, see if we can directly interface with that SDR hardware. So I've got Armbian on the SD card, we've got the Dreamcatcher booted up, and I'm just going to log in over COM7 serial port on USB with the PuTTY application here. Alright, so we are logged in. So I'm attempting to install SDR drivers on this thing, but I'm not able to hit any of the archives, so not quite sure what's going on with this. It might just be that it's too old of a Linux distribution and none of the links work anymore. Yeah, I can't get update or upgrade to work on this either. It's just not finding any of the IP addresses for where it expects software packages. Again, this is like a 2015 release, so I'm sure the internet has moved on, Debian has moved on, and they probably don't maintain any of this anymore. So I'm kind of striking out on getting anything updated or installed onto the Dreamcatcher board. So maybe I'll just throw that back in the box and maybe we can do something else with it in the future. Supposedly with two of these, with Armbian on each of them, we can download a LoRa chat app and we can send messages between the two because the SDR chip on there not only receives, it also transmits. So again, it's really cool hardware. It's got some really cool features on the SDR side of it, but unfortunately the software, the firmware is just not really supported enough to apparently do anything modern with it. Maybe when I get bored of downloading Othernet data with the other Dreamcatcher, then we'll get both these Dreamcatchers put onto Armbian and we'll try chatting between them. It seems like it's similar to Meshtastic, but different because you can choose what frequency you want to use, and as long as you're a ham radio operator, you could use almost any frequency that's legal to use for data, for chat messaging. But I think that's going to have to be a different video. I'm still using the other Dreamcatcher board, and I don't want to modify it just yet, so we're going to set this aside. If we end up doing that LoRa chat thing, we'll do that in a different video. Well, I think we're going to wrap things up with Othernet, Outernet, and the Dreamcatcher hardware for now. I might leave an antenna set up long term to see if it updates past September 12th, if anything new comes in, but it really seems like it's been abandoned at this point. I think it did have a lot of potential. If it had managed to get a government grant to beat censorship around the world, yeah, this could have been a good thing. If it had used some open source hardware or cheaper hardware that anybody could use, then yeah, it would have been a lot more available in third world villages for DIY people, for off-grid people. The website itself even said it's not really designed for the general public. It's not easy. You have to be a DIY person. You have to be willing to tinker, to fiddle with it, to mess around with it. You have to go on the forum. You have to get advice from others. As far as I can tell, they had really good technical ideas, but they didn't seem to have any idea of how to make money on it or make it self-sustainable. Maybe something like this could be developed in the future using something like Starlink or repurposing other low-orbit satellite constellations. Maybe Iridium or Globalstar or Inmarsat could start doing something like this. As their internet and phone service starts being taken away by Starlink, maybe they could shift into providing some interesting data casting stuff like this to third world countries, to off-grid users. I think there is potentially a market for it out there. I don't know if there's much money in it. It seems like Othernet wasn't able to find any money in it, but again, maybe with some government grants, with some kind of donation-based thing like Wikipedia, yeah, again, there are some potentials for something like this. Anyway, I hope this has been an interesting video. I do apologize for coming to this so late, right at the end of life of the Othernet program. Like I said, I meant to try it out earlier, I wanted to try it out earlier, but I could never tell if it was legit or a scam, or if it was even still broadcasting. There just was not enough information on it out there, and the only reason I'm doing a video on it now is A, because I heard it's going away in December, and that kind of kicked me into gear to look into it a little more, and then B, Greg sent me that hardware. So again, thank you to Greg. Very cool that that showed up, very timely. Again, I did not know that was coming, so that was just a fantastic coincidence that I got those Dreamcatcher boards right when I had heard that the system was shutting down, and right when I was starting to think about looking into it again. So everything just kind of came together. We were able to connect to the Othernet system. We were able to download stuff. Again, kind of outdated stuff, not very useful stuff, but the system is still alive. It is still broadcasting in late October of 2024 and will supposedly still be broadcasting until December. So if you happen to find one of these gadgets at a thrift store, hook it up to a satellite dish, give it a shot. It's kind of fun even if it doesn't have the very latest news updates. Anyway, I hope this has been an interesting look at a strange and obscure little piece of satellite data download history before it goes into the history books completely. Thank you to everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.